Awesome. So we are going to get started here. Thank you all for joining us on a lovely Wednesday night. Actually, it was 55 degrees here in State College today, tropical heat wave. So we were very excited about that. But really happy you all can join us. And like I mentioned, if you want to switch over your screen name over to your Twitter handle, that could is a good way to encourage some networking amongst the group as we talk about networking. So there you go. Really excited about this conversation. We've done a couple, some of you I'm sure know, but got a great group here from a lot of different backgrounds to talk about networking, and not just have you network together, but tips for networking and maybe the proper or the way we suggest doing it as professionals in the industry. So once again, really excited to be here. The way we're going to run this is each of the panelists are going to give a quick background on themselves, 1 or 2 minutes. We've got some other experts who joined us who I couldn't have more than 6 panelists, or no one would ever get to talk. So there's some other experts who are in the crowd, and we'll be monitoring the chat box too. So if you have questions, drop them in the chat box, and our panelists here and the ones in the crowd can also answer some questions for you. So we're going to ask a bunch of the real general questions that should relate to everybody. But if you have more specific questions, or you can't wait for me to ask my question that I will later on, feel free to drop it in the chat box. I anticipate the call lasting about an hour to an hour and a half. That's how these things have been going. We'll keep things focused on networking itself. I had a lot of people ask many good questions about topics in the sports business other than networking. We've touched on a lot of those already. I just posted a link to the YouTube page where I've posted all of our conversations. We've talked about professional development, resume building, job interviews, grad school options, and a number of other things. So there is in the chat box, there's a link to that page if you guys want to visit that. I'm planning to record this, and if everyone says stuff that they're okay with being out there in the world, we will publish it. Shortly after, I will drop those links on my LinkedIn or Twitter page, and if for some reason you don't have that, I'll put those links there too. Shameless plug. But usually it takes about 3 or 4 days for us to post it. So it should be good. Once again, please use the chat box if you have some more specific questions about specific things that relate to you. But we're going to try to ask some really good general questions here to everyone. So without further ado, let's meet our panelists. I've got the order here, so you guys are going to have to remember it as I tell you first. But we're going to start with Nikki, then go to Jeff, Katie, Brian, Brad, and Max. You're the closer. So Nikki, you're up first if you want to start with a quick introduction.
Sure, and I will try to be brief. My name is Nikki, or Nicole Murray, doesn't really matter which. I actually met one Mr. Chris years ago, many moons ago, at undergraduate at UConn, and we sort of kept in touch over the years. I think we're a couple of people that ended up in the sports biz coming out of UConn. But coming out of undergraduate, I actually worked in community colleges doing public relations and athletics and all of these different things. It was really a great way for me to wear a lot of different hats and figure out not only what I was good at, but what I wanted to do. So I lived with my now husband, who's military. We're Space Force now. But we went out to Wyoming. I worked for Laramie County Community College, which is great for a little 22-year-old female East Coaster. One of my sports was bull riding. So not that I did, that I covered there, but fast forward a little bit, and I am currently in my 12th season at the Washington Nationals here in DC. I started out with coming in at back-to-back 100-loss seasons, and fast forward to an all-star game and a World Series, and it's been pretty remarkable. This topic is on networking, but I will just briefly say that I was actually turned down for a job at the Nationals before I actually finally got a job. And one of the reasons why I got the job that I did to get my foot in the door was that I, one, kept in touch with the people that I had interviewed with initially. And even though I didn't get that position, but I also met a lot of people at networking events, so that when I finally went in for my interview for the job that I got, the guy said, Nick, like, I've been hearing your name everywhere. You know, why does everybody know you? And I do think that it's a worthwhile skill to develop. So I'll just kind of stop there. And if anybody wants more information, let me know.
Cool.
Jeff, you're up.
Yeah. So I'm Jeff Eisenband. I feel like I'll be a little different than the other panelists in that I am a journalist and a broadcaster. So front-facing talent. And I went to journalism school at Northwestern. After that, went home to New York City, where I worked for a website called thepostgame.com. It was a Yahoo Sports site at the time. And really, you know, this was 2015 to 2018. It was a really digital first website that allowed me to write, tape interviews, do audio, run social media, and you know, learn a lot of different skills, but also allowed me to go out there and network and meet people wherever I went, whether I was covering something, whether I was attending a panel like this, whether, you know, I was just at a networking event. I joke with people that before this pandemic, you could probably go to 365 sports media or sports marketing networking events in New York City if you really wanted to, one a day. So I really pounded the pavement with that. And I got to the point where I felt like I had met enough people and created a network that I could go freelance. And that's kind of the first piece of my personal advice that I'll tell you, because I get a lot of college kids that say, you're freelance, I'm considering doing that. It's tough when you don't have that network right out of college. So, you know, I always advise to go somewhere and use that first job to also help you build up your network. And so for the last 2.5 years, I've been freelance broadcast talent. And as of right now, I'm doing a sports show on HQ Trivia, working for MSG Networks, contributing to the NBA 2K League and the PGA Tour as well.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. Thanks for being here. Katie?
Yeah, so I am Katie Perchlik. I went to Michigan for my undergrad. I actually did not major in marketing or sports management, but now I'm in the marketing field. So you don't have to major in the fields you end up in. But I did intern with the athletic department and had a few other sports internships in undergrad. And then I went to McNeese for a year and got a lot of hands-on experience in a bunch of different areas with being at an FCS school. And then I was at Utah State for 3.5 years and Nebraska since November 2019. And then with the networking side of things, being involved in professional organizations like NACMA, COSIDA, whatever organization fits what you're doing in college athletics. And then also I run YP Sports Chat. So that has helped my networking a lot.
You got a lot of fans in the chat already.
I know, I saw
Good
those
for you.
coming in as I was talking.
Good for you. All right, Brian, you're up.
All righty. Great to see everyone here. Good evening. So just kind of start off, Chris, thank you for this opportunity. So this is amazing. I'm glad to have everyone here on the call. But I would say meeting Chris was part of networking, just how we connected with each other. So a colleague between both of us connected us on Twitter. And then next thing you know, like now we're on a panel, now we've talked a number of times and just shared some ideas with each other. So you see networking in play right there. But a little background about myself. So I've worked with the Detroit Pistons, Pals of Auburn Hills, also with the New Jersey/Brooklyn Nets, Boston College, OUE Skyspace in LA, and now I'm with the Miami Marlins. So similar to Nikki, she mentioned starting off with the Marlins, we lost 100 games in a row for 2 straight years. So been there, done that, and got the t-shirt. So, but I'm super excited to kind of learn from you all and kind of share some of my experience in regards to networking. Just a quick background. So what I do is handle director of membership experience, so renewals. So we're networking and meeting all of our members, which will eventually help us from a sales process. So Networking is huge for us, but looking forward to diving in deeper on this topic. So thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it. Bradley?
Chris, thanks for having me. Max, good to see you. Everybody on here, listen to Max, because Max has got an interesting story. And then you guys can't see my screen, but Adam North. Hey, buddy, I see you. Give me a wave. Thanks. Brad Keene, University of Alabama, undergrad PR, graduate degree in sport management. Then went on to work at Middle Tennessee State in marketing, then Vanderbilt in marketing, Wake Forest marketing, and ended up at Penn State marketing. Happened to work with James Franklin at Vanderbilt, and when he got the job at Penn State, got a call and had an opportunity to see a Roll Tide, Allison DR15. Had an opportunity to join Coach Franklin and his team up at Penn State, and then 2.5 years ago, I guess it was, decided to change course and joined the Learfield IMG College team here at Penn State, so Penn State Sports Properties. So now working with Learfield IMG College, and primarily focusing on sports sponsorship and business development. Still get to flex my marketing muscle, as much as Chris Grassi allows. He has final say. So 10 plus years in marketing, and then a new adventure for me over the last 2.5 years, and really looking forward to the conversation tonight and learning something from everyone.
Thank you, Brad. And as Brad alluded, Max is going to be our final person who is introducing himself. And I just have to tell you, Max might not have the resume that we all do, but Max is probably the single greatest networker of all time. I mean, if you guys have spoken to Max, you understand that. And I thought, guy just landed, not to steal your thunder, but just landed your first full-time gig, and you did this networking thing the right way. And I thought you'd be a perfect person to talk to everybody here. So Max, sorry to kill any of the suspense there, but take it away.
Well, yeah, I mean, Chris, can't thank you enough for giving me this opportunity. And as you said from the outset, I'll try to be and Nikki, hopefully you appreciate this, a Daniel Hudson or Branhand type to kind of close this introductory part out. But yeah, as Chris alluded to, I by no means consider myself the greatest networker, but it's been such a phenomenal part of my development, not just professionally, but personally, and just getting me to the point where I am now. So that kind of leads me into where I'm at. I'm currently the Fan Experience and Promotions Graduate Assistant here at Liberty University, their athletic department. And I'm also going to be obtaining my master's in business administration while doing so. So really excited for this new chapter, of course. I just got off my first baseball game, so really the adrenaline's pumping, of course. But prior to that, I interned in marketing both at Rice Athletics remotely, and my kind of most formational professional experience was my internship through the University of Washington Athletic Department. That's also where I got my undergrad, majored in communication and political science. So again, like Katie said, didn't get a marketing degree, but hey, I ended up here and, couldn't be more thankful and excited to, continue my career in this kind of pathway. But, kind of diving deeper, my passion for sports came from, as a lot of yours probably did, as a fan. And I had the luxury of growing up in San Francisco in the golden era of the San Francisco Giants, 3 World Series in 5 years, Golden State Warriors, got to enjoy some NBA finals. So that really kind of drove my passion for sports. And when I kind of realized, hey, I can't play baseball anymore, the sport that I love, how can I find something that'll keep me involved and keep me connected to something that I'm so passionate about, something that's been so instrumental in the way, I've kind of developed in my life. So that was really the driving force for why I'm in sports. And really my passion evolved from the fandom side of things to now that I've seen the kind of other side of things, at least, for a couple of years now, the impact that sports has on so many different people, and the impact that we all, on the panel can have on not just athletes, but fans, and really uniting a lot of people through it. So that's kind of my passion in a nutshell, but really excited to be here again. And hopefully I can give you guys some good tips. Brad and Chris pretty much built me up. So hopefully I can live up to those expectations. But again, like everybody said, feel free to hit me up, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever it is. Just make sure you send me a little bit of an intro. I always love to hear that and get to know you a little bit more. So yeah, excited to learn from all of you as much as I'm excited to speak from my personal experience.
Always networking. I like it. I like it. Good job, Max. Cool. All right, so we're going to jump into our questions here, and panelists, just jump in as you see fit to answer the questions that you feel most passionate about and have an opinion about. But the first question we're going to ask is pretty much the simplest one. What should your goal be in networking? What should you be out there to do? Take it away. I could call on somebody, but
I'll go. I'll give it a try. I'll break the ice. So I would say for me, when going out there and networking, it's more about learning about the other person on the other side. Obviously, I know my story. I know who I am. And like everyone in the world loves talking about themselves. So that's a given. But it's more just kind of talk to the other person, getting them, learning about them. How can you be an asset for them? And what they're looking to accomplish. So I know we go to sales sporting or networking events, and literally you have people that go there and they'll give you their business card, and then you're always talking about yourself. This is what I do, this da. But take a step back and do the reverse, which a lot of people don't do. And I think we can do better as a society in that regards, but it's more saying, hey, I'm Brian, tell me about yourself. And just that simple question right there kind of lets their guard down. They start talking about themselves, and then you kind of get into a natural flow of a conversation. Versus on the opposite end, if you just start rattling off facts about yourself, what you do, you're probably going to turn that person off pretty quickly. But so for me, I want to learn as much as I can about that individual, and then also learn how I can be an asset to them. And at the end of the day, I want to be myself and just have a conversation. No matter if it's a CEO, a janitor, whoever it may be, an intern. I just want to talk to someone on a personal level. I think over the past year, we've all had that opportunity to now connect with people on a more personal level, and I would say be more humanizing in our approach, which I think is definitely going to advance our networks, who we connect with, just overall, like who are human beings.
And just following up to what Brian mentioned, he dropped a lot of different great key terms in there that I'm sure we'll revisit throughout this conversation. But I wanted to pinpoint the relationship side of things. For me, it really is all about making relationships. I'll say 100 times, relationships are what got me to where I am, and will continue to support and elevate me throughout my career and life. And that's something that I want to be able to reciprocate, where not, your relationship or what you've helped me with or served me, I want to pay that back, but I also want to pay it forward. That's kind of the purpose that, all of your panelists here are here for today, is we want to pay it forward for you, so you have the tools you need to succeed, in that next step, in those next couple steps, whatever your goal might be. Your goal is going to change. I don't care what happens, but it's going to change, and it's up to you to kind of adapt to that, but also maintain that drive, that motivation, and make sure you're always having that that attitude of, hey, I want more, I want to get this. And maybe it might not necessarily be as clear as you might want it to be at this point in your life, but it's going to get you there. And the more relationships, the stronger relationships you can build, the better off you're going to be, because people have your back. It's a testament to Chris, to Katie, to Brad, to, the folks I've really been able to establish strong relationships with, because they're going to stick their necks out for you. They're going to make sure that they can provide the service that, that you need from them to get you to the next step.
I think it's also important, Max kind of jumped on it, that relationship building, but it's really about connection. And he really hit the nail on the head about the idea that your desires and your goals with your network and the network that you're trying to build is going to change over the years. And so I didn't mention it, but I do community relations for the Nats. So much of my job is relationship building. So when I go networking, when I'm networking, I'm not just looking at like, hey, I'm going to need a job someday, so I need to build my network so I can get a job. It's okay, I need to network because that's going to make my job better, or I'm going to be able to do my job easier. Or it might be personal. I have this health problem or something. Who in my network might know something about this or this other major life event? I know it's especially in this, we're all here because it's a sports biz networking call, but think of your network as sort of just a broader, relationship building action. You're really, the goal is really just to plant that seed, and don't just do it at networking events. You want to do this in your life. You are a whole person. So are the other people that you're trying to meet. So whether you are, you're in a running club or you're, going to your aunt's 85th birthday or something, somebody there knows somebody who might help you. So you should always sort of take that frame of mind.
Yeah, and just going off what everyone else has said, like especially what Nicole just said with like, you don't know where, like someone could be in marketing right now and then they're going to be in development in a few years. Like you don't know where people you connect with are even going to be, let alone where you're going to be. So don't just do it because it's like, oh, they're just like, I'm in marketing, so I'm going to network with just marketing people. Like have that diverse network in different areas. And then also don't just focus on networking up, but across with like your peers and stuff, because those are the people you'll be moving in the industry along with, and they're going to know a lot of the job openings and stuff and they'll be on those committees. So, and be able to give insight.
Yeah, I would say I've also created a little 10-3-1 rule for myself, which is what I say. You have to talk to 10 people to meet the 3 people that are going to actually be able to help you one day. And there's 1 person in there who can help you right now. But you can't, it is a bit of a numbers game, and you can't just pinpoint, I need to make sure I talk to that one type of person or that one type of person. You need to put yourself out there and have fun with it and meet as many people as possible. And, like echoing what's been said is you just never know where people are going to be years from now. So a lot of you guys are young, you're right out of college and you're thinking in the short term right now. But there are people who I networked with at 23 that I didn't think much of. We followed each other on LinkedIn and maybe social. And then our circles come back at 27 and they're like, oh, I've seen all the stuff that you've been doing, but that wouldn't have happened if I didn't just have that conversation years earlier.
Yeah, Chris, I'm going to round us out and transition us to the next question, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Everybody take out pen and paper if you've got it. I agree with everything that everyone has said. The one thing that I will say that if you've heard me speak on one of these before, you've heard me say, opinions and advice aren't one size fits all. But hopefully you hear something that affirms something you already know, or provides some value in one way, shape, or another. I mean, a lot of this stuff that you hear, though, you should already know. I mean, you've heard this before. I basically, and I jotted down some notes, so I'm looking at them, but I basically jotted down like a 6-step process that I like to think about in terms of networking and informational interviews. And it speaks to what everyone said. So 1, you need to do the work. You need to sit down and clarify what it is that you hope to learn before even reaching out to somebody. And then once you've done that, you need to identify who can help you learn that. And then once you've done that, you need to reach out to that individual and you need to invite conversation. And then once you've done that, you need to prepare for your conversation. And then you need to show up eager to learn. And then you need to express gratitude and follow up. And so, it's not something that I know that makes it sound pretty straightforward and clean cut, and it's not always like that. But just know with networking, I mean, you've got to do the work, you can't be in it for the short game. You got to be in it for the long game. And you don't know how it's going to pan out. And I love what Jeff said, the 10-3-1. The thing is, like, you don't know who the three are and you don't know who the one is. It's kind of like in sales. I know that 90% of what I pitch is going to fall flat and 10% will actually land. The problem is I don't know which is 90 and which is 10. And so, I think that's how I also like to look at networking. And yeah, just do the work. You got to do the work. You can't just sign up to this thing and start reaching out to all of us afterwards and think that you're networking.
Thank you, Brad.
You got it, Chris.
What a fantastic motivator. Appreciate it. Brad and I are buddies. I can say that to him. That kind of leads me into my next question, which is our only question that's not exactly related to networking, but I think it has a lot to do with how you need to set yourself up for when you start. What's the best way to build your personal brand and build out your social media profile and set yourself up for success when you start reaching out to people?
I always say, first of all, start micro, start with what start with what you're interested in. Don't try to be someone that has to know a million things. Like if you live in LA and you're a big Dodgers fan and love baseball, then focus on that, to start building and connecting with people. I think too many times people just try to overreach and do too much of that. But the other thing that I've been telling people is, in today's day and age, whether you like it or not, when you apply for a job or when you meet someone or someone wants to look up anything about you, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to search your name on social media profiles, and that's what they're going to find. So you have to think about that, sometimes more important than a cover letter for certain jobs that you might be applying for. If you're applying to work in social media or digital media for a team, they're going to take a look at your social media profiles and really consider what they're getting out of that. So I think you have to realize that people you don't know, that's going to be their first impression of you, and you want it to look as organic to you as possible.
Go ahead, Katie.
Oh, it's okay. I agree with everything Jeff just said, but I also think that some people get worried about that, and that's why they have separate accounts, especially on like Twitter and stuff. And I don't think you need to have separate accounts. I think you can quote tweet and show your personality, but it can still be professional, and it just shows your interests outside of working directly in sports. So I think having that balance is good for that insight as well.
And I'm glad I can speak after Katie, but, to reference something Brad said, with regards to the last question, there's no, just like there's no one size fits all piece of advice, but there's no one size fits all for how you can go about building your personal brand, how you can kind of conduct yourself. There's a lot of different ways you can stand out, a lot of ways you can be recognized. And I'm glad I'm with Katie and Chris, because you don't have to have a YP Sports Chat. You don't have to have really funny, popular tweets that everybody can get involved with on Twitter. But, so long as you can kind of stick to something that, really showcases who you are. I think that's at the base of everything you want to do, is showcase who you are. Don't try to fit the mold of something, because if you're going to try to, make yourself out to be, oh, I'm a great marketer, right? And I'm going for this marketing job, and you're not that, and they hire you, like, you're not going to succeed in that kind of environment. So that's kind of the setting yourself up for success in the future side of things, and really just be true to who you are 100% of the time, really. And, just make sure you're obviously being professional, but, try to find those things that are a little bit unique about yourself. Don't try to, do too much. I think keep it simple, and, people will see that. People will connect with you a lot better than if you're going to try to, overshoot and be someone or do something that really isn't true to who you are.
Chris, I would turn the question around on you, because you're someone that has done a really great job of building your own personal brand. I mean, you and I talked about this. That's how I first knew who you were, right? Like I I was a follower, and I would see things, and even when I was at Wake Forest, I'd see things and I'd go, man, like this guy's really creative. And then, that then ultimately, led you and I to becoming friends at Penn State and us being able to build that relationship. So like, how would you answer that question?
I wasn't prepared to speak. But yeah, I've spent a lot of time on it, and really focused on it and focused on the way that I'm representing myself. I think there's a way to show your personality and what you're interested in and doing it in the right professional way. We had a job open recently and someone sent me an email saying that I applied for this job, and it was a really nice email. I just want to let you know, here's my resume, here's my cover letter. I'm really looking forward to talking to you. By the way, here's my LinkedIn profile, my Twitter profile. And I click on this person's Twitter profile, and the profile picture is a person drinking a beer, right? Not a great start, especially if you're putting it in to official communications to people that you're looking for a job. I mean, we know that most of you drink beer. That's fine, but if you're going to use, in my opinion, if you're going to use your social media accounts, especially Twitter, as a networking tool that it can be, then you need to be cautious of the stuff that you're posting and the conversations that you're having. I post some fun stuff that's conversational and stokes up different opinions, but it's nothing like, tell me your favorite religion or who's your favorite politician. I keep things light, and I try to engage to encourage interaction and get people talking with each other. And then I meet people like Jeff, and I meet people like Brian, and other people. And I think it's important how you display yourself out there. I don't talk trash about other schools. I don't talk down to people that we just beat. I don't share my opinions about the Yankees. I could, but I don't. I keep things pretty sterile overall, and I've made that choice because I use this tool as a networking tool. That's my 2 cents. Thanks, Brett.
I mean, you nailed that, Chris. So great job. But I would say a couple of things I was just thinking about with that question being asked. I think one thing we all have to do is just start. Just do it. Start building it. And I think when you're being authentic, your true self comes out, and then doing it from a consistent manner too. This doesn't just happen overnight. When you build your own personal brand. I know there's some things that I've done with my team where now people are noticing, and people are now like, hey, when's the next meeting that you guys are going to do? So I think that consistency part of it is important as well, just to kind of get your brand out there and start building.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to jump into the next question. Thank you, guys. All right, so the next question is, so you're ready. You've built a good personal brand. You've cleaned up your profile. How should your approach be when reaching out to someone for the first time?
Before we get into everything, I just want to say LinkedIn, great platform to use. Definitely, take advantage of it. But something that I think Brad told me in one of the first times I met him was I was the only one out of 30 plus people who sent him a connection request that actually sent a message, a personal one that related to the panel that I was going to be participating in the discussion of. And, that's something that I look for. And I think I can speak for all the panelists when I say that is it makes that connection a lot less transactional and a lot more, hey, I want to actually have a conversation with you. I want to build that connection, from the outset versus, hey, I see you working at this place that I might want to work at, or you're in this job that I want to have in the future. And that's why I'm sending you the request. I think it comes off a lot better when you're able to say, hey, I love that you worked here. Can you tell me more about that? Or you just accomplished this great thing. I saw this post you put up and I want to know more about what you have to say, what you think about this, et cetera, et cetera. So before everybody gets into it, I just want to make sure that point gets put across because, it just makes that connection a lot more personal versus transactional.
would agree with that. And I know a number of you have sent me LinkedIn requests, and I actually don't usually accept LinkedIn requests if I don't know you, or if you have not attached a personal message, at least, stating your intent. I got burned really early on in LinkedIn with people kind of trading on a relationship that we didn't really have. And so that was been my personal choice with LinkedIn. But if you are, pretty open about, hey, I saw you on this panel, or hey, I'm really interested in what you're doing in the nationals, or whatever, I'll read it, and I'll take the time, and I'll connect, or I'll message, or something like that. I think, that personal message makes it stand out, but the just generic, I'd like to connect on LinkedIn, just isn't going to get it done. At least for me. And I would say, as probably one of the older people on this call, I think that is truer of, our generation and up, especially if you're going towards trying to connect with people in leadership positions. The other thing I would just say right off the bat is to be mindful of people's, we're talking about sports business, right? So there's a season that you kind of have to attach, like, don't reach out to me right before opening day, because I'm not going to get to it. That's not to say that I don't want to get to it, but I've definitely had emails that kind of drop down in my inbox, and then I get to it, eventually. So don't be incredibly disappointed if you don't hear back right away. But if you're following somebody on Twitter and they're about to have a baby, don't reach out right now. Like, that's not a great time. Just be cognizant of what's going on in their life.
I think you have to recognize that you have to play the long game sometimes, and, reaching out and typing a million things about yourself, and that you want to get a job in this particular industry right this second, on the other side, there's a lot going on there. So I think it's important to start a relationship. If you want to follow up with one of us, and it's a conversation like, hey, I really love, or I'm interested in hearing more about what you do. I'm trying to still figure out what I'm doing, or, that could be more of a lighter conversation than sort of asking for help or asking to be hired right away. So I think, it's recognizing that. And the other thing that I think is worth mentioning, Max was talking about how great of a platform LinkedIn is. I think it's important to use. And I tell people this all the time. You have an interesting article that you see in an industry you want to get into, and something that you're interested in, share it on LinkedIn. And it doesn't have to be in your face, read this article right now, but spark a conversation on LinkedIn. Show people on LinkedIn that you're aware of things that are going on. You have an independent personal voice, and, can develop opinions. I think that helps just get recognized by more people on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I would say, and once again, I agree with everything that's being said. It's great. I mean, a few quick points. Your primary, like when you're talking about networking and reaching out, I mean, we're talking about informational interviews, or whatever you want to call them, but your primary aim for an informational interview, I think Brian said it perfectly, should be to learn from your contact's knowledge, insights, and experiences. Are you curious about their career field? Are you hoping to gain insight into their company's culture? You want to better understand day-to-day responsibility of their position? Really clarify what it is you hope to learn, and understand how this knowledge can ultimately, help you in pursuing your career path. But yeah, I mean, it needs to be kind of short and to the point. Not to say that I don't respond when someone sends a novel, but it just, it's just not as well received as it is when it's just kind of to the point, and just gives me an opportunity to respond. The last thing I will say, because I want to get this out of the way, and Chris, I'm definitely going to bring the motivation or the good vibes here. Not at all. So I did get burnt. Like, the first time I did this, I said, hey, reach out, informational interview. I'll talk to anyone who reaches out to me. I think I had 50, probably 60 informational interviews. And Max knows, and Adam knows, and there are a bunch of you on here that know, because I did an informational interview with every single one of you. And it was a lot. So please do reach out to Jeff and Katie and everyone else on here. But here's what I'm going to say. Here's what I'm going to challenge you to do. instead of reaching out to me for an informational interview, like reach out to someone that's not on this panel. You know what I mean? Because it almost seems like it's too easy to reach out to one of us to say, hey, you know, I saw you on this panel last night and it was great, yada, yada, yada. Like that seems too easy. So I would advocate, instead of reaching out to me, you know, do your research, go in, find out who it is you want to connect with, and kind of go through those 6 steps that I labeled out. And then after you've connected with them, if you want to shoot me a note and let me know how it went, I'd be happy to go back and forth. But man, I tell you, like, I did all those information interviews, and I did them like an hour at a time, and it was a lot. So just going to put that out there. Agree with everything everyone's saying. It's a great panel you got here, Chris.
Each one of the panelists should pick someone that they want to have fun with, and we could put their name in the chat and tell everyone to reach out to them. So that'll be fun. And thank you.
Sorry, Chris, can I add one more thing?
Absolutely.
Sorry, to add to what Brad just said, if you have a story, like a very, very unique story that Brad does have, and if you have the privilege of talking to him, you'll learn it. But, you know, if you have something like that and you get 50 requests, you know, in even a month, that's a lot of meetings, you know, it's going to be a lot. So definitely take Brad's advice there. But, you know, one last thing I'd like to say, you know, piggybacking on what Brad says, clarify what you want to learn, go even deeper and ask yourself why. Like that's going to be my main theme here is why. Ask yourself, why do I want to connect with this person? Why do I want to learn what I want to learn from this person, et cetera, et cetera. That's going to be your guiding kind of force in your networking philosophy and your approach, because and apply that not just to networking, apply it to what you're studying, what you want to major in, apply it to where you want to work, what kind of job you want to work. Because if you can't answer that question with a good enough answer, that's probably not the pathway you want to take. It's not the job you want to shoot for, because you're not going to have that passion that you'd have for something that you can say, hey, I want to work in sports marketing because I love being able to make those connections, or whatever it might be. So really ask yourself that question over and over in as many different environments you might be in. Take this beyond just this call, beyond just networking.
Just real quick for that, Max, I think you nailed it. So I know that's a question that we ask a lot, you know, especially on inside sales where you're banging out 100 calls a day. It's like, what's your why? What's your reason behind what you're doing? I think as long as you have that understanding, like everything else you do, and now you're doing it even with more effort because you have a purpose behind it. Instead of people that we do sometimes see in inside sales where they kind of just go through the motions because it's a job and it's business tomorrow. It's like, no, it's bigger than that. You know, it's like, what is your why? Why are you here? What drives you every day? And it actually helps us in the interview process, because then we can make sure when we're talking to that individual, like this role fits for you because of your why. Because if your why is totally out of left field, we'll probably be honest with you and just say, hey, this role may not be the best fit for you, but here's an opportunity that might fit what you're looking for. So knowing your why is 100% important.
I want to jump in as well, because I saw something in the chat down here. I didn't catch all of it, but it was the idea of advice for introverts, or, you know, how can you do this if you're not an extrovert? And I think that's a common misconception that extroverted people have this really easy. You know, this networking is hard, and it's a skill, and you have to practice it, You can get better at it. And, you know, putting yourself out there, you don't have to always be the loudest person in the room. You know, there are ways to go about this in ways that are true to who you are and who you want to be, or your brand, or whatever. But you know, until you get to that point, you fake it till you make it. And that's really the best advice that I can have. You make a plan, take your action steps. This should be intentional. It shouldn't just be, hey, I'm going to go to this networking event and throw myself out there. You should have a plan going in and practice it just like you would practice your jump shot.
Going
And
off.
I think also, oh, sorry, Katie, go for it. Sorry.
What Nicole just said with that, because I did see that in the chat too. And there's different ways to network. It doesn't have to be a Zoom call or attending a conference like Twitter chats. I'm very extroverted, but I have a lot of friends who are not extroverts, and there's different avenues that you can network and not like feel that you're pressured and like have to meet 100 people at a conference kind of thing. You can still network. There's different forms of networking. So if like cold call or like Zoom isn't where your comfort level is at first, you can do the Twitter chats. You can do more of those, not like face to face to start to like have that relationship to build up to a phone call or Zoom.
And I think one more thing is your networks are a lot larger than you think they are, and you have a lot more relationships than you think you do. You don't have to, as Katie just said, take a certain pathway to making this connection or getting in touch with a lot of different people. You know, you have families, you have classmates, roommates, people who you're surrounded by on a regular basis that, you know, if you are a type where you're not as inclined to go make a cold call or a cold email, ask your friend saying, hey, you know, what are you interested in? Maybe, you know, who's a mutual connection that, you know, would be open to talking, right? So there's not just one way to do it. And there's a lot of ways that you can make those connections, extend those relationships that you currently have, because the ones you currently have, I'm sure, are going to be very helpful for you, not just, you know, again, with networking, but with other things that you might have coming down the pipeline.
Before we get into a few tips before you for informational interviews and when you're prepping for that, I want to ask, because we got this question a lot, is what to do if you don't hear back from somebody. If you reach out to them on Twitter, DM them, message them on LinkedIn, send them an email, shoot them a phone call. What's a good approach if you don't hear back that first time?
I'll jump in. I mean, once again, you know, opinions and advice isn't one size fits all. So, you know, what I'm about to tell you might not jive with any of the other speakers. But, you know, I think for me, it's okay to follow up. You know, I mean, obviously you need to make sure, you know, you need to be cognizant of the different sports cycles and so on and so forth, but it's okay to follow up, and it's okay to say, hey, you know, just following up, shot you a note, you know, hopefully we can connect over the next few weeks or soon. You know, if not, I truly understand how busy you are, and, you know, best of luck with whatever. I mean, I'm okay with that, because, you know, I mean, sometimes I need that. You know, we're all really busy. I mean, sports is crazy. I mean, it is, like, you know, it's a lot. And I don't think anyone, or most people are willing to help, and they're not trying to avoid the conversation. They just quite simply don't have time. I mean, time is finite, and we just run out of it. So I think it's okay to follow up and just say, hey, you know, just following up, and would love to connect, and kind of quickly reiterate why, and go from there.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's, it goes back to what you're asking of them. And I think, you know, Jeff said it before, like if you're playing the long game, then you have time to sort of build those relationships over time. If you're doing this when, when somebody has an internship or an entry-level position posted, if you're waiting to that point, yeah, that's a time crunch and you might be a little bit too late. But if you are really intentional with, you know, hey, Katie, I want to reach out to you. I have this question about this, or I'm really interested about this. Then Katie knows how to prepare for that and what she can bring to that conversation. If you are very vague and general, like, oh, I really love sports and I want to connect, you know, that's fine, but that's more work for the person to sort of figure out how to react and interact. It just kind of puts it puts more of the action step on them than on the person asking, if that makes sense. I think I just circled around a little bit.
No, I actually want to echo what you had said before, Nikki, about opening day. And like, I know myself, I get sidetracked way too often. Like I'm sitting there responding to an email and all of a sudden I get a phone call and I get a Twitter DM and I totally forgot to respond to the email. Gmail's great, but sometimes just starring an email doesn't remind you when you need to respond to it. And I encourage people. Sometimes I'll send them a message and I'll say, if I don't respond to you in 3 days, send a message back. Like, or I'll say something like, hit me over the head with a message. Like, do what you got to do to make sure that I see something. And I think the number one thing is just be respectful about it. Like, you have to be cognizant that people have opening day, people have obligations that they're doing. They might be traveling, they might be somewhere, who knows where they are. So instead of kind of like, hey, you missed my call, we never set something up, it should be something like, hey, just following up, making sure this is back at the top of your inbox or something respectfully, because we're probably on the other side, like, oh my God, I totally forgot. And it's not on purpose. It just happens.
Yeah. And also, for me, I think I have the luxury of not having that experience super often, more often than not. Those people I'm reaching out to do respond pretty quickly. But again, to echo, make sure you're cognizant of when you send that initial email, when you send that initial request, when you're going to follow up. I think, for me, it's pretty effective if I wait maybe, a couple weeks, because usually, as everybody else said, sports changes, your own life changes too. I think you should be wary of that as well. Like, for me, I got this job offer, a month and a half ago, and there are people who I was supposed to connect with, back in December, who I still have to follow up with. Right. But it's being respectful of both, who you are and making sure, what you can handle, what your schedule looks like, as well as, hey, I'm busy with, basketball. We have both women's and men's basketball all month. So I'm probably not going to be able to get, a conversation, even a 15-minute conversation in with you until next month. So, just really be respectful of both sides, of that connection, and make sure you're, again, being diligent with the following up, but also, just really knowing, hey, here's a good time I can reach out. And also, if you reach out on, if you send an email, you don't get a response, you can send that follow-up, but you can also shoot Katie a Twitter message, right? Use those different mediums and often on Twitter, and I'm surprised someone hasn't said this yet, but Twitter is a lot more casual. For me, it's a lot more comfortable when I'm able to just send more of a kind of a text message format type of thing. So just wanted to, give those two points that I had.
I would like to just add something real quick. Just thought about it, because I'm seeing a lot of questions in the chat box about virtual and in person and all these things. Like, once again, it could be off, but like this, like what we're doing now isn't networking, right? Like what we're doing now is like the prelude to networking. Like this isn't networking. Don't think that like because we jump on this and we talk and we ask questions, like that's not networking. Networking is like a relationship. It takes effort and time and work and energy, and this is the prelude to that. And so, while doing all these virtual events and these small groups and all that, that's great. But where you really hit your stride and you pick up some momentum is when you're able to have someone one-on-one and you're able to talk through things and share those stories. And so just keep that in mind. Don't let this kind of lull you into this false sense of confidence in terms of networking. Like this is the prelude. Like the work happens after this. And a lot of really good questions. But when I see, what's more valuable, virtual or in person? Well, if it's in a large group setting, to me that's just the prelude to actually networking. The work happens afterwards.
Good point. Thank you, Brad. Let's talk briefly about informational interviews and how you should prepare. Just speaking from my experience, I do a number of informational interviews, probably 3 or 4 a week, and the best ones are the ones that people that come to me that are prepared with some really good questions and thoughtful questions, and not tell me about your background, because my background is available to people. And so I really enjoy the thoughtful, challenging questions that I receive from some of these informational interviews. And I know, Brad, you're very passionate about informational interviews, so I'm excited to hear your answer on this. But I open it up to the group on the best way that people who are networking can prepare and approach those.
Research. I don't know if any of you how deeply you looked at that up all the panelists, before this, but if somebody's giving you an informational interview, you should know about them. You should know about their, what they do and how that fits into the organization. And what their background is, because you might be able to find some sort of hook that even further connects you. I got an informational interview really early on that sort of set me on my path with Jim Van Stone, who was with the Caps at the time. And he told me straight up, he said, Nick, like, I don't have a job for you. I'm not going to have a job for you, but come to the office, let's talk. And I had to take a crash course in NHL because I knew nothing about the NHL, at that point in my life. So my husband's like grilling me as I'm on the metro going out to Boston. But you should have sort of an idea of what you want out of that informational interview, and knowing that and knowing who that person is and sort of what makes them tick professionally and personally is going to help you, that informational interview, to be more productive. But I think no matter how you prepare for the interview, what's almost more important is how you follow up. And I know that there's a lot of questions going on in the chat with that. But the idea being that, this is the first step, in any relationship that we have, you have that first step, and then you sort of have to feed that relationship as you move on. And that doesn't always have to be a in-person thing. It can be hey, I saw this article and I thought you might like it. I have a former intern who every opening day, he sends me a note. Or, hey, I saw the game. We're talking about sports here. There's always news that you can connect on. Oh, hey, I saw this trade, or I saw this signing. What are your thoughts on it, or whatever? It doesn't have to be a huge touch point to build that relationship further, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love all of that. And, to kind of build on top of what you said, Nikki, about, doing your research and making sure you're well equipped with that preliminary information. And this isn't, a universal, thing. But for me, I always try to be more, obviously be prepared, but don't be too overbearing with, hey, I know this and this and this about you. Because if you just kind of reel off things you know about them, it's like, yeah, I already know this stuff about me, where's this taking us, right? So I haven't experienced that, but I'm sure, if that were to come up, that would probably be the situation. But, for me, and by no means is it this simple, but, I just prepared, for this question, 3 big points. Number one, again, why? Why do you want to reach out? Why do you want to, learn what you want to learn? What are you hoping to get out of the relationship? Number 2, I like to call it fun homework. I know, for those of you who are still in college, who are still taking classes, you have homework. This is something that, I consider homework, but it's so much more fun than having to do an assignment for a class I had, because I'm able to learn more about that person and be able to better equip myself for that conversation. So do that fun homework, education, career history, notable achievements, etc. And also, again, to reference what you just said, find that little niche that you might be connected in that way. Like, hey, I noticed you had a quick stop at this organization, or you lived in this area. So have you been to this place to eat because this place is the bomb, right? Something small or fun like that can really go a long way in that relationship. And then number 3, and I think this is the biggest one for me, when you're actually having that conversation, be flexible. And what I mean by that is, don't try to stick to that one agenda that you have. Like, you might have that list of questions listed out, but then Brad says something about his time working at a restaurant that, you really connect on, and you can have a big conversation about that. Like, be open to talking about things that aren't necessarily what you had on the docket, because that conversation, that connection is going to be a lot closer, a lot more intimate than, hey, I have this question, let's move on and go, line by line the questions. Because I know for me, when I have those types of conversations, it's just a lot less comfortable for me, even, as a person who's answering your questions, right? So I think those are the big 3 for me, and really just be, I think the biggest thing there was just be flexible. Don't try to steer it in any one way. And if it goes a certain way, lean into it, because you're going to learn a lot about that person. And again, there's a lot of time, unless that person might be leaving, even if they are, you can still talk about that experience. There's a lot of time for you to follow up and for you to get those answers that you might have, you might not have been able to touch on in that initial conversation.
Real quick, sorry, real quick, I would love to double back on that, the listening part of that conversation that you have. So many times we're all just thinking about our own personal agenda and not listening and kind of playing a conversation back and forth like you will with your friends. You don't have a series of questions you ask your friends, unless you're trying to get a lot out of them. But like when you're having a conversation with an individual, like listen to what they're saying and kind of go down that road of conversation. It's something very common in sales on our side of the business where literally you're walking down a series of things versus just saying, hey, do you want this seat? Or hey, do you like to sit here? It's more like, how do you use your seats? And just, oh, you use them with your kids. Great. How old are your kids? Like you're going down a conversation versus just getting a quick answer and then pivoting to another subject. Getting an answer, pivoting to another subject. Like, no, like listen and actively engage in that conversation. And I think that's definitely something huge. Another thing, excuse me, just real quick is know enough to be dangerous. I don't need you to know like where I grew up, what street, how many times I cut the grass during the week. Like just know enough to be dangerous. You don't have to spend your whole life researching the person, but as long as you can get those high level things and it's like, wow, this person really took an interest in me. Like that's all I need. And I think those things will help you with your conversations as you kind of learn more about the individual.
Yeah, and just adding to what everyone else has said so far, make sure you give like an introduction to you, because I've definitely had a few students that like we've gone towards the end of the conversation and I'm like, I barely know anything about this person, like, and why they wanted to reach out to me or like what careers they want to like pursue and stuff. And if I don't know that, it's going to be a lot harder for, like if someone does say like, oh, you talked to so-and-so, like, what did you think? I'll be like, they did their research and like had good questions for me, but I don't know anything about them personally. So make sure to also include some stuff about you, like in the actual conversation.
That's the importance of an elevator pitch, off the bat, just here are some quick facts, and then you can kind of dive deeper in, if that conversation lends itself to it.
So, go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, I just wanted to, this won't take long, I promise, Chris. Just like for me, the best informational interviews are the ones that don't feel like interviews, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? That become conversation, but you have to listen. And to Brian's point, I mean, you have to react. To Max's point, you have to be flexible. So best informational interviews are the ones that don't feel like interviews.
You were brief. Thank you, Brad. All right. So I think probably the second most frequent question I got in the pre-submitted questions was, how do you build, grow, and maintain that relationship after the first contact? And I think this is where a lot of people fall short in networking. It's that one call and that's it. I know Max in particular does a really good job of this. So Max, I'll let you start this one off if you're comfortable with that. But how do you best build, grow, and maintain that relationship after that first conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and thank you again for the praise, Chris. The first thing I always do, it's something that I absolutely cannot go without doing, is send that email follow-ups, thank them for their time, thank them for sharing a part of their lives, a part of their, career experience with you. Even a simple email like that, like, Nikki was saying, it might get jumbled up with a lot of different things, but when she gets to it, it's like, hey, this isn't an email saying, hey, this needs to be done for, our upcoming series over the weekend, right? It's something that's different. It's saying, hey, just a nice, lighthearted thank you, really. So that's what I always do. It's pretty much a requirement for me when I'm doing these informational interviews and connecting with people, is always do that. So that's step number one. Step number two, if you do follow them on social media or you send them a LinkedIn connection, if you choose to do so, send that occasional message, like the occasional photo, retweet, especially if it's something that you're super invested in, or it's like, hey, this is something that's so fun that you had a hand in. It's something that's like 50 characters, but it just shows that you're still engaged with what that person's doing. You're interested in what their, life is like, and what's going on. And again, it's something that's so easy. It's take out your phone, tap on the app, and then, write a short sentence, right? Even an emoji. I think sometimes I've sent an emoji to somebody and it's like, even that goes a long way, right? That's step number 2. And then number 3, I always try to make a point to connect every couple months, a couple times a year. I'm kind of kicking myself as I was thinking about, leading up to this call, this panel, is that there are some people I've connected with back in the summer of 2019 that I haven't reached out to since. And I'm like, why haven't I reached out? And, that's something that's on my bucket list, or not bucket list, but just, to-do list now, is being able to reconnect after, 1-2+ years. So, those are kind of my 3 things that I always like to do. People talk a lot about handwritten notes and sending those out. I sent Christmas cards to a lot of people, this past holiday season, and I think it was more impactful because we weren't, connected as we normally are. So, it doesn't have to be any one thing, but those are kind of the things that I've done recently, throughout my networking experience, if you will. And, really it just boils down to making sure you're attentive, making sure you're just following up, however frequent or infrequent it might be, because it really just goes a long way. It keeps you on that person's radar or those people's radars, and it just keeps you in the ball game, really.
I think that was a lot of great stuff from Max. And I think what I would add is, it comes back to being personable when networking, and taking note of maybe something that a common ground that you have with someone, or something that's unique to someone. So then when you see an article, or when you see something on Twitter that relates to that person, you can, send that to them and have a conversation that has nothing to do with, I need a job, that has nothing to do with, your particular career goals, but it's just a conversation that you can befriend this person. And then maybe when either way you have something, you know, to have a more career conversation with that person, it happens more organically. And the other thing that I think we've talked about is social media. And maybe you're someone that says, I'm not that good at social media. Well, maybe it's just one social media. Maybe it's LinkedIn or Instagram or Twitter or Facebook that you're better at, and, lean into that, because you'll end up having you'll circle back with someone a year later and they'll remember something that you posted. They didn't talk to you about it, but because you're following each other, they saw it. So that's always important as well.
I think if we look at it, think about the relationships you have, whether that's, your friends from college, or your coworkers, or your family, or whomever. We all go about our relationships and feeding those relationships in different ways. And for a lot of us, I think it comes down to effort. Max mentioned, handwritten notes or something like that, or maybe I throw them an emoji. You remember the effort your people put in, right? You know that, this person puts in this much effort. This person, does bare minimum. I haven't talked to this person in years. And that's not to say that any is less or better than the other, but it's the idea that they're making that intentional effort to keep in touch and to stay connected with you. And I think if you approach your networking relationships and your professional relationships not the same, but in a similar strategy, I think it becomes a little bit more, I don't know, easier for you, because it's something that's true to how you maintain your own relationships.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think it's the effort and the authenticity. I know I sound like a broken record probably, but if you're really doing this for the right reasons, to network and interest in other people, like, it's going to come out. I know one thing I've challenged myself with over the past 6 months is, I used to go on LinkedIn. I used to like friends' images or pictures or postings and all that. And I was like, well, that's pretty easy for people to do. I mean, anyone can go in there and click a button. So I've challenged myself, instead of just going on and liking, I do want to drop an emoji. I do want to drop a quick comment in, just to show them like, hey, I really take an interest in what you're doing. And I'm not just doing this so you can get 30,000 likes, you know? It just shows them like, hey, like a lot of people can like it, but are people really taking that extra step of putting a comment down? Even if it's the generic ones, I try to go off of the generic ones, just so they know like this is really me. This isn't just something that's being auto-generated. But yeah, that's, I know for myself, that's something that's definitely a challenge for me. And I challenge people on this call to do the same thing.
And just going off of that, like it doesn't have to be formal follow-ups every time. Like it can be just a quick text like, hey, saw you guys beat your rival, like congrats on the win, or like quote tweeting a tweet or like commenting on a post and stuff. Like it doesn't always have to be a formal paragraph, like catch up email kind of thing. It can be something casual and quick.
And then I just want to, I mean, in like, I can put all of that in practice. You know, I just scrolled through, and Chris, your count's dropping. So I don't know if that's us or you, but I just scrolled through the pages, and I mean, I like, there are 3 people here, Max being one of them, Adam at Virginia Tech, and Nicolette Rojo, who I've had multiple conversations with that have all taken different approaches. You know, Max reaches out beforehand, reaches out afterwards. We have those conversations. Max, I'm assuming you sent a card. I'm in Naples, Florida, so I didn't get it in State College. When I get home, I'll let you know.
Brad, no, it got rerouted to me, and I was like, this
Okay.
is the right address he sent me. So I resent it, and then it should be sitting over there in State College. So
good. And then Adam's at Virginia Tech. Bob Gavigan is the director of marketing there. You know, he and I worked together at Wake Forest. Adam put 2 and 2 together, made that part of his initial ask in terms of the informational interview. Bob followed up with, hey, great guy. Adam and I have had multiple conversations. Nicolette, someone who reached out to me, who drops me a note from time to time without an ask. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, I saw this. Hey, this is cool. And then every now and then there's an ask. Those are 3 people right there that I know, that I have a relationship with now. And you know, and that's because they did their due diligence and they did the work, and they all went about it, you know, in their own way. But it kind of goes to show you that like what we're doing, what we're talking about does work, and it makes a difference. And, you know, it has to be authentic. Who knows if I'll ever be able to help any of them out. But at some point, if I am, I will. And so, you know, just, I mean, it kind of goes without saying, like, do what we're all saying needs to be done, and trust the process, and it will pay off.
Before we close out, final thoughts from the panelists, and then I've got big announcement at the end, so you got to hold on tight for that. So, but if any of the panelists want to share some final thoughts before, the floor is yours.
I'll just say, just because there's been a lot of information on here for the last hour plus, enjoy it. Like, this shouldn't be a stressful experience as much as, you know, just going at it like you're meeting people, you're getting to know people in the world, you're finding out about different aspects of sports business. And the other thing that I think is important to note is whatever you do right away is not what you're married to for the rest of your life. I remember when I got out of college, I was thinking the first job that I do that first year, this is going to dictate the next 50 years of my life. And that's just not true. And, you know, so if you start in one aspect of sports media or sports business, or not even in sports, and you want to get into sports, use those networking opportunities, you know, try to meet people, build that aspect of your life up. So then, you know, you can work toward that. I think that the misconception that a lot of people have is you're not going to get your dream job right away. I mean, someone will, one in, you know, maybe a couple 100,000 people will, but for the most part, you're probably not going to get that first job being your dream job. So think about yourself, all right, in 5 to 10 years, this is where I might envision myself. How do you get there? And like I said, you got to play the long game a little bit in order to inch your way closer and closer to getting there.
I would say also that dreams change. Even if you got your dream job, that doesn't mean you don't pivot later on, because life happens, and we know that pandemics happen and things change. But I would just sort of close out by saying, we talked a lot about, researching but I think also the why is really, really important. And that why kind of goes back to, as much as you're researching what the person that you're trying to network is doing, or who they are, you have to know yourself, and you have to know why you're doing it, what you want to get out of it, and you have to know what your goal is for each of these people, and it might not be the same for each people. So you can be as strategic as you want to be. I know a lot of people will teach you, make your, like, this is my spreadsheet of people I know, and these are like the most recent touch points. These are the people I want to know, and these are the most recent touch points. So you can be really, scholarly about this. You can also take a little bit more lackadaisical approach. It depends on how type A you are. But I think that first step of knowing who you are and what you want to put out there. I have an old boss that always used to say, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And in order for that to happen, you have to know you, and you have to know how you're going to put yourself out there. Because if you are going forward with all this networking stuff and you don't have that, Chris called it a brand, if your takeaway isn't ready, then you're kind of floundering. You want something that you can kind of point people to, whether that's your LinkedIn or your business card or your website or whatever. You want something out there that can kind of show who you are in this respect.
I'll say that my advice, the advice side of what I'll kind of close out with is make sure you take advantage. And I say that with, kind of a caveat of, don't take advantage of your current relationships just to, make those other connections through networking. But, really take advantage of growing those relationships you already have. And something that I've been thinking about recently is strong relationships will lead to other strong relationships. So if you're able to, as we addressed the question earlier, continue to build those relationships, follow up, and be a consistent presence, excuse me, is, that leads to that person introducing you to other people, or sending you, like, literally the job I got right now. One of my connections that I made sent me this job opening. So you never know what kind of things can come out of it. But more importantly, again, you don't know how great of a connection you might be able to build with that person, these people that you have a handful of, like, hey, these are the people who are in my corner, and they're the ones who I'm going to go to with, hey, I have this grad school assignment, I have this exam, or I have this project I need to work on at my job that I know you've gone through a similar experience. So, and we have that rapport, so you can help me out with that. But, obviously it goes a lot deeper than that. So I could kind of talk in that cycle all night long, but, I think you get the gist of it. But also, and hopefully I don't spoil, Chris, I know you said phone homework, but I will say one thing I would like you to do. And first, I'm going to lead off with saying, if you're here, if you've made it to this point, you're clearly invested with your future networking abilities. So what I want you to do is find, a handful, 2-3 people on this call who aren't the panelists per Brad's request, and reach out to them, whether it be a Twitter message, a text message, if you know them already, an email, a LinkedIn request, whatever it is, and have a 15-minute conversation. It's as easy as that. And that just kind of gets you, that's your launching pad. That's where you can get your start if you haven't already, or something that can continue what you're already doing. So please do that if you're dedicated to it. It doesn't have to be super complex. And as Jess said, it shouldn't be something that you stress over. The only thing stressful is that initial initial conversation, initial, reach out, where I always get nervous. You can kind of tell I'm kind of nervous even talking here because I just want to say the right things for all of you. But it's something that at the end of the day, and after you wrap up that Zoom call, when you click that leave button, it's going to be something that you can kind of think back and say, hey, this was a great conversation I had, or this was something that was so, worthwhile, fulfilling for me. And hopefully this, the same can go for anyone you reach out to. So I'll leave you with that, kind of rambling here, but just wanted to make sure I get all of that out.
And I would just say networking there's not a one size all approach. There's not one correct way to do it, not do it. There's not one way to build your social media brand and like your personal brand. So just try things. And you might not find it right away. You might think email works best for you and then realize you do better on a Zoom face-to-face instead of just talking on a phone call and stuff, and just try those different things out. And then when you find what works best for you, attach yourself to that and then go forward with it.
Yeah, just real quick. I mean, I appreciate everyone's willingness to be on the call and last all the way through. So kudos to you all. But I would say the biggest thing is like, just be yourself, understand your why. And then I think everything else will fall into place. You don't have to have a strategic plan of like, I got to reach out to someone every week, unless that's you, but be yourself, reach out to people. It's okay. They're not going to bite. And I think when it's all said and done, you'll see your network grow organically, and then people will find out who you are. But just be very intentional and know your why.
Yeah, here's my parting shot, Chris. I think like Jeff hit on it, and then Nikki followed it up. Like, it's not like a straight ladder to success. It's a jungle gym, and this doesn't really have much to do with networking. It's just sage advice. It's a jungle gym. Sometimes you're going to go left, sometimes you go right, sometimes you go down, sometimes you go up. For those of you who know my story, I spent 10 years after high school, working on an archaeological dig, managing an Applebee's. I managed a bar for a few years, so I know that when you jump on these things and you see the panelists and we kind of talk about what we've done, it seems very like polished and very like boom, 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 boom. And, and that's not always the case. And so if there's eating good in the neighborhood, you got it. I was a kitchen manager. But if like, it's never too late. And don't get discouraged if you're thinking about doing this, or you've recently decided to do this, or you don't know what you're going to do. I mean, it's not a straight ladder. It's a jungle gym, and and you can make it happen. It's not easy. It takes work, and you got to do it. But just know that there are a lot of people in your corner that want to help you and want to support you. And I think 99% of the people do. And kudos to you, Chris. I think I told you this the other day, not to make your head any bigger than it already is, but like, you've probably done more for this industry in terms of young professionals over the last 10 months than anyone else. I mean, this guy's like really passionate about it, and he's done a lot. And so if you've missed any of the past panels that Chris has hosted, you should go and check those out too. And thank you, Chris, because you're keeping it going. Are you going to ask the question you always ask?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, there is a big surprise at the end. And since I said that, we've only lost 2 people. So that is how you market. I'll tell you what, that's called a tease in the business. But before I get into that, I wanted to thank all of our panelists here tonight. Really appreciate you all spending your time. I had a couple people in mind when I came up with this idea. The rest of the people messaged me saying, I want to help out, I want to volunteer. And I really appreciate that. And it just shows the strength of this industry that I had to turn panelists away because we had so much interest in people helping out. So, so thank you all for doing that. Thank you all for being here. If you have other thoughts on topics that you would like us to talk about, please, please let me know. I'm kind of out of topics now. We've done the job interview, resume, professional development, grad school option, and now networking. So if you've got other ideas, please shoot me a note. And thank you all.